It all began with a piece of earth-shattering news. The planet had suddenly reached its very end. However, humanity did not perish along with it, for a clocksmith appeared, calling himself Y, claiming he could restore the Earth. And so, more than 1,000 years later, in the year 2016, in the district of Akihabara, mankind still lived on. The scene shifts to a blue-haired young man standing at a corner of the city, as though waiting for something. Sure enough, moments later, a helicopter appeared, accompanied by several robots charging straight at him. The young man showed no concern, for behind him, a woman and a man rushed forward to deal with the robots. The blue-haired young man simply reminded them of the next coordinates of the remaining helicopters, ordering the girl named Marie and her bodyguard to continue fighting. The next second, different types of robots swarmed in and surrounded them. The blue-haired young man, Naoto, remained completely unfazed. He contacted a girl named Ruzu, who had been observing everything from a distance. Upon receiving the signal, she swiftly drew her weapon and swept through the battlefield. She effortlessly dodged every attack and wiped them all out in an instant. The world they lived in was the planet restored by the one called Y, constructed entirely of countless gears, and known by its full name, Clockwork Planet. Time rewinds to 1 month earlier in the Kyoto district, at a high school, where Naoto went about his day heading to school as usual, paying no attention to the issues unfolding around him. By afternoon, he hurried home from school to his beloved room, a place filled to the brim with clocks of every shape and design. Naoto cheerfully chatted with them, dreaming of becoming a clock repairman, though it seemed that dream was far from easy to achieve. Naoto slumped onto the sofa in frustration, muttering to himself that if only a miracle would happen or a shower of divine talent would rain down upon him, then his dream would finally come true. To his shock, the moment those words left his mouth, a strange cube fell straight from the sky and crashed into his home, smashing his entire clock collection to pieces. Before Naoto could even grieve, he stood dumbfounded at the thing that had just crashed into his house. It looked like a coffin. After a few motions, the box opened, revealing a beautiful white-haired girl lying inside as if she were asleep. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Marie received word that the container holding YD-01, an automaton classified as a national treasure belonging to her family, had been lost. Her reaction was one of utmost severity. Furious, she immediately ordered her bodyguard Halter to dispatch people to find and recover the missing automaton at once. In the meantime, Naoto was still gazing at the person inside the box, feeling as though this was a wish of his coming true. He could hear the sound of gears from inside the box. It was fascinating, yet at the same time, he sensed that a gear inside this girl's body was jammed. Since the box had crashed down and nearly destroyed his entire home, Naoto thought for a moment and ultimately decided to try opening the girl's body first. The gears inside her were all so beautiful that Naoto was left in awe. And so, despite knowing his repair skills were utterly lacking, he grabbed his toolbox and decided to try his luck. Elsewhere, Marie had gone to find a man named Conrad on the 3rd floor of Kyoto's core tower. Before they could even speak, a military squad cut in, claiming they were there to provide support. Marie called them out on the spot, telling them that amateurs had no business meddling in the affairs of professionals. Back at his place, Naoto worked with extreme care to repair the girl's mechanism. After a while, he finally managed to reach a gear shaped like a heart. Naoto thought for a moment, then decided to follow his own heart and try turning a screw on this heart-shaped gear. Instantly, the heart began to move, beating in harmony with the other gears. Naoto was overjoyed at the sight, but at that very moment, the weakened floor gave way beneath him and he plummeted to the depths below. The instant Naoto cried out, the white-haired girl opened her eyes, snatched him from danger in a flash, and carried him soaring through the sky. Once they reached a safer place, the girl introduced herself as Ruzu, Unit 1 of the initial Y series. Ruzu thanked Naoto for fixing her, even though it had taken him a full hour to do so. Before Naoto could even react, he fainted from sheer exhaustion. When he came to once more, he found himself resting on Ruzu's lap. Seeing that he had calmed down, Ruzu asked Naoto whether he had her blueprint or any basic information about her. Naoto had no such blueprint, but through sound alone, he could absorb knowledge and had picked up a few things about the gears within her body. Hearing this, Ruzu fell silent for a moment, then directly asked Naoto to become her master. With her robotic intellect, she recognized that Naoto was currently the most talented clocksmith on the entire Clockwork planet. Naoto was stunned and found it somewhat laughable, but seeing Ruzu speak with such cold objectivity, and noticing a hint of sadness on her face at being refused, he tried to give it more thought. On one hand, Naoto understood perfectly well that Ruzu had to be an extremely capable and important automaton. At the very least, she belonged to some corporation. At worst, she could even be a national secret. Even so, his overwhelming excitement swept all of that aside, and Naoto accepted the role of Ruzu's master on the spot. Following Ryuzu's instructions, he let her prick his hand to draw blood and establish the bond of master and servant between them. At this time, inside Kyoto's core tower, Marie was still working alongside the doctors stationed there on repairs. They grew suspicious when they noticed the military was nowhere to be seen, so they sent another doctor named Karasawa to investigate. Outside the city, thanks to Ryuzu going back to retrieve his belongings, Naoto managed to salvage what little he had, and the two walked together along the road. After a while, Ryuzu suggested they check into a love hotel to rest. While Naoto was still reeling from shock, a group of thugs appeared out of nowhere, shoving him aside and trying to drag Ryuzu away with them. Seeing them about to lay hands on her, Naoto immediately pulled her behind him to shield her, willingly taking the beating despite how weak he was. Ryuzu paused for a second, then smiled. She lifted the hem of her skirt, drew her hidden weapon, and disposed of the thugs in mere seconds. In the end, following Naoto's decision, they rented a small room to rest for the time being. When Ryuzu saw Naoto sleeping in a corner, she was displeased and told him to come sleep on her lap instead. As he was drifting off in comfort, Ryuzu voiced a doubt of hers. She was merely an automaton, so why did Naoto treat her like a real woman? And why did he care about her so much? But Naoto had already fallen asleep and could not answer. Late into the night, despite being at two different locations, Marie and Naoto both jolted awake at the same time. Unlike Naoto, who simply went back to sleep, Marie was instantly alert. She left her room and told Halter to quickly assemble the senior team. Sure enough, everyone at Kyoto's core tower had noticed it. For a single second, there had been an anomaly in gravity. It was faint, but if it continued, the entire Kyoto district could collapse. Marie immediately wanted to go find and patch the source of the malfunction. But right at that moment, Karasawa walked in with a report. The military was carrying out a forced purge of the entire district. They knew full well that there was too little time to evacuate the civilians, and they had chosen to simply abandon them. Indeed, even a once-in-a-millennium genius could not create a clock that runs for 1,000 years, let alone forever. Everything has its limits. Now more than ever, the world needed someone capable of maintaining these gears, someone like Y from 1,000 years ago. The very next day, Marie decided to descend to the lower floors to assess the situation. The soldier from the day before bluntly stated that the core tower was an invaluable asset under military jurisdiction, so if she wanted to go down, he would have to accompany her as an escort. On the way down, the soldier reminded Marie to watch her hands, since she was nothing more than a mere repairwoman. Without hesitation, Marie drew her gun to warn him to watch his words and not underestimate others. Under Marie's interrogation, the soldier honestly confessed that in 20 hours, around 3 in the morning the next day, the purge of Kyoto would begin, under the declaration that Kyoto had developed unpredictable anomalies. The military, unwilling to lose face over their inability to fix the problem, had decided to kill over 20 million people. This sent Marie and Halter into a fury. Upon learning that the anomaly was located on the 24th floor, in the pressure control sector, they immediately set out to repair it. But the moment they knocked the soldier unconscious, the elevator suddenly stopped and the power was cut simultaneously. Elsewhere, Naoto woke up from the noise as well. When Ryuzu asked about the quality of her lap, Naoto explained the issue was not with her, but rather that the ground beneath the core tower had been extremely noisy lately. Ryuzu understood. It was caused by minor flaws in the structural design of the Kyoto district. Using sound, Naoto pinpointed the source of the problem at roughly 70,000 meters underground. Ryuzu recognized the location as approximately the 24th floor. After all, both this planet and she herself were created by Y, so they shared a synchronized understanding. They quickly left the room and headed for the dining area. Listening to Ryuzu talk about the Guildmeister, Naoto grew excited at the idea of joining. If he could get in, he would be able to tinker with the core towers and do so many incredible things. Ryuzu smiled at Naoto's innocence. Through their conversation, Naoto learned that she had been created over 1,000 years ago, making her 100 times his age. Down below at that moment, Marie was trying her hardest to fix whatever was going wrong on the 24th floor. But first, she wanted to quickly alert everyone about the purge using the special emergency frequency reserved for guildmeisters, since the military had now become their direct enemy. After establishing a connection with the communications division outside the core tower, Marie swiftly contacted the person named Lemons in charge of communications, relaying her concerns and requesting to be patched through to Chief Conrad on the 3rd floor. Back at the core tower, the doctors who received the news were all shocked. The purge was happening earlier than they had anticipated. Marie ordered everyone to get to the 24th floor immediately and deal with the anomaly before things got any worse. But Conrad calmly replied that their position on the 3rd floor relied on an energy system powered by the mainspring on the 15th floor. That mainspring would need to be repaired before they could reach the 24th floor, and at the present moment, it was impossible. Halter realized this could be a deliberate ploy by the military, with the problems on the lower floors being intentional sabotage. Conrad estimated it would take 4 more hours to complete the repairs. Marie told them to head to the mainspring first. After cutting the communication, Marie and Halter quickly descended more than 30,000 meters to try to fix the anomaly. Since Conrad could not reach them, he and the others in the core tower could only redouble their efforts to eventually regroup with her. Outside, life carried on as normal. Naoto went to school again, only this time with Ryuzu by his side, which attracted a great deal of attention from everyone. Somehow, she had managed to enroll in his class as a transfer student, and she even introduced herself in front of the entire class as Naoto's plaything. Down below, Marie and Halter were still making their way along the pipelines toward the mainspring. The moment they landed, the guard robots identified them as hostile targets and attacked. Halter swiftly scooped Marie up and moved with lightning speed to dodge the danger. Once they spotted the mainspring, Marie had Halter hold off the robots while she used her tools to repair the massive machine as fast as she could. Among the lesser robots, there was one shaped like a powerful bowl, strong enough to give even Halter a hard time. Meanwhile, with Conrad assisting remotely, they successfully connected the mainspring and immediately fled the area as fast as possible. They now had only 18 hours left. The world outside was still peaceful. After school, Naoto sat glumly gazing at the city, since walking around with the beautiful Ryuzu had made him a target of jealousy and hatred. But thanks to Ryuzu's comforting words, he managed to cheer up a little. They talked together. Ryuzu had been here since 1,000 years ago, and truthfully, nothing about this place had changed at all. It was utterly stagnant. Thanks to successfully activating the mainspring, everyone quickly made it to the 24th floor. But they encountered an enormous challenge in the repairs. The floor contained billions upon billions of components, making it nearly impossible to locate the source of the problem. Even with only 9 hours remaining, they decided against issuing an evacuation order, because if they did, the military might launch the purge immediately to silence everyone. At that moment, Halter came in bearing news from guild headquarters. They were being ordered to withdraw immediately. Marie was furious and desperate. Being forced to retreat by orders, she wished Ryuzu were here, because at least that would be a miracle. In her moment of despair, Halter could only urge her to keep thinking and find a solution, to not give up. By now it was afternoon. Naoto was strolling through the streets when he decided to pull Ryuzu into a clothing store to try on outfits. Naoto treated Ryuzu like the beautiful automaton she was, helping her pick the finest clothes. Despite a few chaotic moments, they had a wonderful time together. By evening, Marie went to see Lemons. He maintained his stance, demanding they withdraw, since the military was currently operating the entire core tower. They could not simply ignore their position and had no choice but to give up. Marie was outraged. Those were more than 20 million lives at stake. Seeing Lemon's indifferent attitude and how casually he sided with the military, Marie realized he had already leaked the situation to his superiors. Marie wanted to defy the order and keep trying, but Lemons threatened to revoke her repair license and reduce her to a mere civilian. It was then that Marie understood. Lemons was connected to Vacheron, and everything happening now was a scheme by Vacheron to destroy the reputation of her family, the Breguet clan. In her rage, she wanted to kill him right then and there. But at Halter's reminder, Marie could only turn and walk away. She was utterly devastated. They were willing to kill millions of people just because of her and her family. It was horrifying. Even so, after calming herself, Marie resolved that she would no longer play along with their scheme. On the other side of town, because Naoto liked it, Ryuzu decided to buy the outfit after all. Just then, as they walked along the street, they happened to run into Marie and Halter coming from the opposite direction. In an instant, as if sensing something, Both Naoto and Marie turned to look at each other. The moment Marie saw Ryuzu, she froze. Was this not the very thing she had been searching for? After their unexpected encounter, the group immediately gathered in a different hotel room. The moment Naoto saw Marie introduce herself, he was filled with admiration. Was that not a time compass, the proof of the world's finest clock engineers, capable of inspecting and repairing every type of gear? Setting that aside, Marie brought up Ryuzu, declaring that she was an asset of the Breguet family and that they desperately needed her back, so hand her over. Naoto refused without a moment's hesitation, no matter how generous a reward he might receive. Seeing Naoto's defiance, Marie dropped her polite facade and ordered Halter to deal with this guy and take back what was theirs before things got complicated. Though Ryuzu remained silent, her eyes had already begun to swirl with menace. Halter, ever perceptive, immediately recognized the danger and urged Marie to take back her words right now. Marie was stunned. She turned around to find Ryuzu's weapon already poised at her throat, ready to end her life at any moment. Halter quickly rose to his feet as well, aiming his gun at Naoto. Ryuzu asked Marie calmly, did she intend to kill her master? The tension in the room was suffocating. Ryuzu stated plainly that if they so much as touched Naoto, she would turn them both into mincemeat. Halter fell silent for a second, then decided to lower his weapon in compromise, making sure to remind Marie to agree to these terms as well. Only then did Ryuzu withdraw her weapon. Halter exhaled in relief and warned Marie to stop running her mouth recklessly. If Ryuzu got serious, neither of them stood a chance, and in truth, Ryuzu was the one in control of this conversation. Hearing that, the two finally composed themselves and honestly recounted everything that was happening in the upper floors of Kyoto. Ryuzu was the first of the Y series, and also the finest automaton left behind by Y, the creator of Clockwork Planet. These machines were maintained and entrusted to future generations. The fact that Ryuzu had awakened at this particular time proved she had a critical role to play for this planet. Ryuzu listened in silence, then flashed a contemptuous smile, remarking that Marie and Halter seemed to have been suffering from severe delusions and neurological issues from the very start. Naoto, well aware of Ryuzu's sharp tongue, could not help but feel a pang of sympathy for the two sitting across from them. Ryuzu declared that her primary duty was simply to stay by Naoto's side and do everything for him, which moved Naoto to the brink of tears. Taking pity on them, Ryuzu was about to mention a name, someone who could help them this time, when Naoto suddenly sensed something and immediately grabbed Ryuzu's hand to leave, warning the others that something enormous was coming. Sure enough, the next second, a massive tremor struck. Was it the gravitational anomaly, or had the purge already begun? This tremor was far more violent than before, affecting the entire city and causing widespread danger. After regaining her composure, Marie turned to ask Naoto how he had sensed it. Naoto explained that he had heard a tremendous noise from deep below and even pinpointed its exact source, the 24th floor of the core tower. Marie was astounded by this extraordinary ability to listen. Halter was equally astonished, especially since Naoto was wearing noise-canceling headphones the entire time. How was this even possible? It was then that Ryuzu spoke up. Naoto was far more talented than they could imagine. He had found and repaired the very malfunction that had kept her dormant for over 200 years, and he was the person she believed capable of saving this city. Everyone was stunned. Ryuzu went so far as to declare Naoto the greatest clock engineer on the planet, making him flush with embarrassment. Marie, never one to take serious matters lightly, immediately wanted to bring Naoto down there to stop the purge and ask them to lend their support. Naoto was still hesitating, but then Ryuzu mentioned that her younger sister was also somewhere in the basement of the core tower. The instant Naoto heard that Ryuzu had a sister, another unit just like her named Anchor, his eyes lit up and he agreed to help on the spot. They quickly descended into the lower floors. When Naoto learned they needed to avoid the military, he used his extraordinary hearing to warn them that the soldiers already knew. Lemons had ordered the military's automatons to surround them. Marie hesitated upon hearing this. If she charged in recklessly, it would cause a massive rift between the Guildmeister and the military. Naoto asked them why they were overthinking everything. They wanted to repair machinery, so just go and do it. Why all the hesitation? Marie was taken aback, but clarity struck her, and she resolved to press on with the original plan. As they moved forward, Halter took point and engaged the enemy. Marie drew her gun and joined the fight. Ryuzu served as Naoto's personal shield, and in the end, Naoto was by far the weakest and most useless of them all. Yet despite lacking physical strength or combat skills, Naoto possessed the uncanny ability to map out the terrain and identify every type of robot. This went far beyond mere hearing. While they were still moving, Naoto called for everyone to halt immediately. There was a robot lying in ambush up ahead. Shortly after, Lemons received a report that left him stunned. Marie was dead. He immediately ordered his subordinates that after today, the official story would be that she had perished in the purge, not that she was killed by Vacheron's people. Marie's death left Lemons deeply unsettled. On the other side, Marie had successfully fooled them using a pre-recorded audio tape. They had also saved the evidence from that call, which meant the connections between the military, the guild, and Vacheron would finally be exposed. As it turned out, when they had faced the massive robot earlier, Ruzu had dispatched it effortlessly with one hand. Thanks to the faked death, Marie's identity was now officially dead, meaning her actions would no longer be bound by her former status. They went ahead and destroyed the time compass, much to Naoto's dismay, before continuing their journey by car. While they were driving, Ruzu sensed something. She instantly pulled Naoto into her arms and sliced the car clean in half. To everyone's astonishment, a massive bomb tore through the gap where the car had just been split. As expected, standing before them was the entire defense squad of the core tower. To break through, and because they had targeted her master, Ruzu stepped forward to annihilate the automatons herself. To the shock of everyone, Ruzu shifted into a completely different and far more terrifying form, a transformation made possible only because Naoto had repaired her. In this mode, even the latest generation of automatons were nothing more than gnats, and she dispatched them all in the blink of an eye. However, having exhausted all her energy, Ruzu collapsed entirely. Time was running out. Halter hoisted both of them and rushed into the core tower as fast as he could. Once inside, Naoto tended to Ruzu's repairs first. The mode Ruzu had just used was called imaginary time, a hypothesis that existed only in theoretical physics. It was time orthogonal to the normal flow of human time. Ruzu had fought within a temporal dimension that human beings could not perceive. Recalling that Ruzu had said this mode was possible because of Naoto's repairs, Marie sank deeper into despair. Her illustrious family had been surpassed by an ordinary boy. After a while, Ruzu regained consciousness. Halter and Marie, fearing she might self-destruct, backed away cautiously. Naoto, moved by the battle he had just witnessed, blurted out that he wanted to marry Ruzu. Naturally, she rejected him without mercy, reminding him that they were master and servant. Halter found this remarkable, since automatons were typically programmed to obey their master's commands absolutely. Ruzu explained that she truly cared for Naoto, but if they were to marry and become husband and wife, they would be equals, which would contradict their master-servant relationship. Naoto listened to the ticking of her clockwork heart, then asked whether her feelings for him were genuine and free from any external influence. Without hesitation, Ruzu nodded. Naoto's face turned red. So Ruzu loved him. Ruzu leaned in closer, nodding over and over again to express her feelings, leaving Naoto deeply moved. Marie and Halter, who had watched the entire scene from start to finish, were caught between rage and helplessness. Kyoto was on the brink of destruction, and these two were putting on a love show in the middle of it all. At this point, only 5 hours remained before Kyoto's collapse, and the tremors outside the city were growing more violent. All they could do was sprint toward the 24th floor at full speed. Marie and Halter noticed that the doctors and Conrad were nowhere to be seen and assumed the military had forced them to leave. With only a single gate separating them from the 24th floor, Naoto used his hearing and detected people inside the room. Halter immediately drew his gun with full caution. Fortunately, when the door opened, there were no soldiers or automatons waiting for them, only the doctors, who were still working with everything they had to locate the components that needed fixing. They had never left. Marie felt both helpless and deeply warmed by their unwavering devotion. By now, more anomalies were appearing throughout the floor. Marie announced that she had a secret solution, but before she could even introduce Naoto, the boy was already wandering excitedly around the room, marveling at the magnificent mainsprings and gears all around him. After a loving yet forceful reminder from both Marie and Ruzu, Naoto finally remembered why they were there. Marie introduced him to the doctors, stating simply that they needed Naoto to repair this place. Naoto was hardly surprised by the doubtful looks he received. Among the doctors, Conrad stepped forward to dispel the skepticism, reminding everyone that in less than 4 hours, the purge would commence. Whether they believed in this plan or not, they should follow Marie's orders. Naoto nodded, then climbed to a higher section of the 24th floor. He listened intently to the room for a while, then removed his noise-canceling headphones to let his ears operate at full capacity. Every sound was scanned and transformed into images flowing into Naoto's ears and straight into his memory. He perceived the discordant noises within the mainsprings. First one, then two, then three, then dozens of malfunctioning gears. After some unknown amount of time, Naoto put his headphones back on and went down to inform the group that there were roughly 4,000 broken spots on this floor, but only 18 of them were related to the gravitational anomaly affecting Kyoto. Marie pulled out a map and had Naoto identify the locations and share any ideas, while everyone else would handle the actual repairs. Marie assigned Conrad and his team to tackle the 12 Tier 3 problems, instructing them to repair on site without wasting time on further inspection. The doctors followed orders and moved to their designated positions, where they indeed found the malfunctioning gears and successfully fixed them. All the easily accessible spots had been dealt with. The only remaining location was one that ordinary people could not reach, so they had no choice but to rely on Ryuzu. Ryuzu moved swiftly deep into the labyrinth of gears, following Marie's instructions and using her lightning speed to resolve the final remaining fault. While Ryuzu was repairing it, Halter carried Naoto to search for the other problems. There was one issue remaining on the ceiling of the 24th floor. Marie leaped up in a flash and used her supreme skills to fix the faulty gear from above. Halter remarked candidly that although Marie was still childish and had made plenty of mistakes, she was a genius in her own right, just like Naoto. After their combined efforts, the 24th floor was fully repaired, and Naoto could no longer hear any ominous sounds. Against all odds, every repair had been completed successfully. Everyone cheered together in jubilation, feeling as though it had all been a dream. The other doctors made sure to thank Naoto and apologize for doubting him at the start. After all, thanks to him, 20 million lives had been saved. But before they could celebrate for long, a massive tremor suddenly shook the 24th floor. The purge had begun. Marie seethed with fury. So even after everything had been repaired, this place was still going to be destroyed. On the military's side, Lemons had arrived to order his forces to commence the purge before any evidence could be left behind. Down on the 24th floor, the doctors were filled with despair. Only Marie was still racking her brain for a way to stop the purge. In the midst of her thinking, she considered using Ryuzu's imaginary time mode, but Naoto refused the idea outright. Even so, after weighing everything, Ryuzu made the decision to shut herself down, stunning everyone present. She handed her heart gear to Naoto, then severed her connection entirely. Naoto was heartbroken, but after calming himself, he still asked Marie what they needed to do next to save the district. The military was already poised to press the button that would initiate the purge, dropping the entire Kyoto district within seconds. Just as Lemons breathed a sigh of relief, his personnel froze in disbelief at what they saw before them. The city had suddenly been lifted by an extraordinarily strange gravitational force. On the 24th floor, Marie and the doctors were using Ryuzu's heart to desperately save Kyoto. They had only 30 minutes. Naoto stood beside Ryuzu, consumed with worry, when he suddenly heard the sound of something approaching. Sure enough, a second later, the automatons Lemons had dispatched burst in to kill everyone interfering with the purge. Seeing this, Halter grabbed his bag of heavy weaponry and headed out to buy everyone more time. Conrad followed him, bringing his own set of skills. Together they pushed forward to ensure the 24th floor would not be breached. After regaining his composure, Naoto once again used his hearing to assist Marie in restoring the gravitational balance of Kyoto. The military was steadily losing control of the city, and Lemons was growing increasingly unhinged. Halter and Conrad continued to fight. Inside, they were so close to succeeding, but Ryuzu's body was reaching its absolute limit. At last, the moment Marie finished, Naoto charged forward to retrieve her heart gear, regardless of the injuries he might sustain. Immediately after, Marie honored her promise, pouring every ounce of effort into repairing and reinstalling Ryuzu's heart. Deep within her subconscious, though unable to function, Ryuzu still felt a profound sadness at the thought of sinking into deep slumber once again. After Marie, Naoto joined in as well, working on the final gear teeth himself. After a long while, Ryuzu finally opened her eyes, and only then did Naoto let himself go completely, tears of joy streaming down his face. They had succeeded in saving Kyoto and the 20 million lives within it. Somewhere else inside the core tower, another automaton still lay in quiet slumber. On the outside, Marie had been announced as the hero who saved the Kyoto district from the purge, having sacrificed herself in the process. A solemn funeral was held for her and all those who had perished. Meanwhile in Kyoto, Naoto still went to the riverbank to enjoy the scenery after school as usual. But now he carried a new hope: meeting Anchor. The truth was, after the incident on the 24th floor, they had nearly died. Ryuzu had come dangerously close to losing her life, yet Anchor had never been there. It was truly disheartening. Marie and Halter came to find them, saying they needed Naoto and Ryuzu's help with something: saving the world. Across this planet, many cities had been torn apart by assassination plots. Marie wanted them to join her in repairing the damage and rescuing the world together. Naoto had no desire to help, but when he heard that Marie's intelligence network could help him find Anchor, he wavered for a while before finally agreeing to join. Elsewhere, a team of 3, all ringleaders, had attended Marie's funeral and appeared to be carrying out some kind of mission. During their movements, they encountered a bizarrely small girl radiating pink energy from her entire body, seemingly an automaton. She conjured a cube and hurled it at them before charging forward to attack. Every physical strike the 3 of them threw had no effect whatsoever. The leader turned and fled from the cube. But his 2 companions, Strega and Amaretto, were not as fortunate. Out of options, he could only keep running from the cube until he finally plummeted into a deep chasm it had created. After the fall, he lost a leg and an arm. The woman calmly approached the fallen leader. He was not particularly terrified either, calmly pulling out a cigarette and accepting the cube hurtling toward him at breakneck speed. Back in Kyoto, the truth behind the purge had been fully exposed and brought to light. Everyone responsible had either resigned or been punished. Marie watched with immense satisfaction as Lemons was forced to bow his head before the world. Since Naoto was still attending school, Marie and Halter had no choice but to wander around the city while waiting for the 2 of them. With Marie's identity as a member of the Breguet family now officially dead, she decided to create a new identity as Halter's younger sister. While they were talking, Halter sensed something very strange about this place. At that moment, back at the hotel, Naoto was studying with Ryuzu. While Ryuzu was tutoring him, Naoto suddenly heard a peculiar high-frequency sound. The next second, Marie kicked the door open and barged in, ready to pick a fight with Naoto, only to be swiftly put in her place by both Ryuzu and Halter. Halter spoke on her behalf, explaining the current situation. They wanted Naoto to pinpoint a signal being transmitted via shortwave radio, the same sound he had just heard. Naoto told them the sound was coming from above, at roughly 88 degrees. Marie sat down and used Naoto's school notebook to calculate a more precise location: the industrial district. Halter then elaborated on the content of the transmitted message. It was essentially a string of crude, flirtatious messages, and on top of that, blatantly illegal. Marie was furious about the content and wanted to drag them all along to find the source and teach those lowlifes a lesson. Neither Naoto nor Ryuzu wanted to go, so Halter had to resort to bribery, mentioning that the area was near a beach, a perfect place for Ryuzu to show off in a bikini. The moment he heard that, Naoto agreed without a second thought. Marie was speechless. Halter, meanwhile, quietly mulled things over, suspecting that the signal was not mere trolling, but rather a deliberate attempt to lure them there. Before long, the group made their way to the My Grid, a place of blue seas and white sand. Everyone started by relaxing first. Marie and Halter enjoyed the seaside, while Naoto devoted himself entirely to photographing Ryuzu in her stunningly attractive bikini. While the 2 were playfully chasing each other, Naoto accidentally slipped and fell into the sea, forcing Ryuzu to dive in after him and pull him to shore. Seeing this as the perfect opportunity for a kiss disguised as mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, Ryuzu was just about to succeed when Marie appeared out of nowhere and intervened. The 2 of them bickered for quite some time, completely disregarding whether Naoto was alive or dead. Once the fun was over, all 4 returned to the mission at hand and headed into the outskirts of the heavy industrial district. Following a purge 30 years ago in another grid, this place had lost its 4 seasons entirely, leaving the weather scorching hot year-round. While they were traveling, Naoto seriously removed his noise-canceling headphones yet heard absolutely nothing. That in itself was deeply strange. Why was this grid no different from a ghost town? Moreover, the clock tower was empty and had stopped turning. Naoto was silent for a moment, then concluded that this city was dead. That was also why no wind blew here. Everything had been severed from the outside world. He also came to another realization. If that was the case, then an initial Y-series unit like Ruzu must be residing here, and it was the one that had been transmitting the shortwave radio signal to them. After discussing it further, Marie decided they would still seek out the source. Halter sensed something was off, but chose to stay silent and follow them. Once inside, after breaching the initial barrier, the group quickly descended into the deeper levels beneath the industrial district. Before them lay a vast open space and an enormous hole, as if something had punctured straight through to the very deepest floor. Naoto sensed the source of the signal below this hole, but Marie argued it was impossible. This planet's crust had been seized and stripped of resources 1,000 years ago, so there should be nothing down there but a 5,000-meter abyss. Naoto used his hearing again and perceived a very wide floor and something massive down below, so Marie ultimately agreed to jump down. They did indeed reach a deeper level and found a dismembered automaton there, seemingly the one that had sent the signal. Marie fired her gun to create light, and the group stared in horror at a colossal automaton, spanning over 2,000 square meters. Every component from the clock tower had been used to build this thing, meaning it was the very entity that had killed the city. Marie was incensed. While they had been risking their lives to save the Kyoto district, others had been gutting an entire grid's infrastructure just to destroy the planet. Naoto scanned the area and realized this weapon was already primed and ready for activation. Without wasting words, Marie immediately pulled out her tools, intent on dismantling the automaton. But at that very moment, a figure stepped out of the shadows, the girl radiating pink energy from before. As the three of them raised their guard, Ruzu introduced her. This was Anchor, her younger sister. But Ruzu noticed that her sister showed no reaction to her whatsoever, and was wearing an extremely strange pair of glasses. The next second, Anchor, as if she were nothing more than a machine, assessed their threat level, then began shifting modes, activating imaginary time. In an instant, just like at the beginning, she conjured a cube and launched it at the entire group. Halter carried Marie, Ruzu carried Naoto, and they used every ounce of strength to dodge the cube's attack. Ruzu demanded that Anchor explain what was happening, but the girl remained eerily silent and hollow. Naoto removed his headphones and used sound to guide Ruzu away from danger. In the midst of it all, he caught a faint sound coming from Anchor. Deep inside, the girl was suffering and pleading for Ruzu to destroy her. Hearing this, Naoto was stunned and immediately warned Ruzu that Anchor was malfunctioning. From the start, they had been desperately trying to evade the cube. Halter and Ruzu conferred, and despite Ruzu's warning that he could die, Halter insisted on executing some kind of maneuver. His eyes shifted to red. Both sides quickly seized an opening to attack Anchor, but both attempts failed. This time, Anchor recalled the cube and used spatial manipulation to summon a massive blade, thrusting it directly at them. While dodging, Naoto heard a sound and warned everyone about something beneath the ground. Instantly, the entire group leaped to higher ground. Marie clung to a ceiling beam in the basement and opened fire on Anchor. Halter engaged in close combat, hurling 2 bombs at the target. Though they did not kill her, the explosions caused the ground beneath her to cave in. Marie assumed that below was the bottomless abyss, and Anchor would not easily make it back up. But the words had barely left her mouth when Anchor shot upward like lightning, once again summoning the cube and combining it with spatial manipulation to unleash something new. Naoto removed his headphones and sensed that she was about to activate a triple resonance, a heavy-class weapon, a resonance cannon. With no other choice, they could only do their best to dodge its line of fire. The blast from the resonance cannon was so powerful it illuminated the entire city of Mai, punching a massive hole through every single floor of the core tower. Anchor did not relent. She aimed the resonance cannon forward, directly at where Halter was standing. He made no attempt to dodge, as though he intended to carry out some final act, or simply serve as a shield for the others. Naoto immediately sent Ruzu charging forward to use her weapon to destroy Anchor's resonance cannon. Thwarted, Anchor rushed at them and used her cube to push both of them into the bottomless abyss. Marie was horrified, but before she could say a word, Halter scooped her up and the two retreated as fast as they could. They leaped to higher floors to escape. Despite Marie's desperate pleas to go back and save them, Halter reminded her that the deep abyss was like outer space. Without protective gear, no one could survive down there. He feared Naoto was already dead. Hearing this, Marie was overcome with grief and had no choice but to let Halter carry her back to the surface. They found the nearest hotel and took shelter. No matter how much Halter tried to console her, Marie could not bring herself to feel anything but anguish. She was haunted by the feeling that she had caused all of this, devastated and despairing, convinced that she was the one who had killed Naoto. Finally, after a long while of reflection, Marie rose to her feet once more. She had no intention of retreating. After all, it was thanks to Naoto that they had survived the Kyoto purge. She would not let them die in vain. At that moment, at the governor's mansion in the My Grid, a mother and child sat in gloom, missing the father who was not home to dine with them. Elsewhere, that very husband and father had already been tied up by Marie. She used forceful measures, demanding he answer her questions. Under her aggressive interrogation, the man finally talked. The My Grid was not just hiding a weapon, it was also hiding people. The remnants of the military forces left over from the purge of the Shiga Grid 30 years ago. Although the purge had been announced just like Kyoto's, the truth was different from that incident. Those officials had not done it to cover up the truth. Instead, they had been secretly conducting electromagnetic research, a direct violation of the national treaty. The electromagnetic waves from their experiments had broken through safety measures and paralyzed the entire city. To conceal its own involvement, the Japanese government had decided to purge the Shiga district. The abandoned Shiga military and the scientists then went underground, controlling Mai from the shadows and stripping everything remaining from Shiga and the Mai clock tower to complete their project. The man had known all along but never gone public, because if he had, Mai would have been purged as well. They needed the project to deter the government from purging them, though it was only meant as a deterrent. To put it simply, this project was the nuclear weapon of the anime world. When Marie told the man that the project was already primed for activation, he broke into a wide grin and said that the reason for this was none other than Marie herself. Outside, the machine had been activated and was stepping into the open, with Anchor perched atop it. As it turned out, after the near purge of Kyoto, the government had lost enormous amounts of money and public trust, so it needed this project. The government would destroy the My Grid and play the hero, claim victory, and restore its own honor. The man mocked Marie for being so naive as to think she was pursuing justice. Because of her actions, a great many people were about to die. After learning the truth, Marie left in silence, walking through the rain. In fact, before kidnapping the governor, they had received word from Conrad that the initial Y-series unit in Mai had been relocated to Tokyo. It seemed the government and the Tokyo military were looking to start a war. All Halter could do was console Marie by reminding her that the government was the true villain in this story. Even so, she was deeply shaken. Without Naoto, Marie felt more uncertain than ever about what lay ahead for them. Just as she was drowning in despair, a manhole cover suddenly burst open with a loud clang, and Naoto climbed out from the sewers with Ruzu at his side. As it turned out, after falling into the abyss, they had discovered yet another floor even deeper below. It was a terrifying place where ordinary humans could hardly survive for long. But a strange man living down there had opened an elevator and helped them return to the surface. Once Naoto heard the others update him on the situation, he immediately rallied everyone to head to Tokyo and finish this. Halter cautioned that Tokyo was the military's stronghold, and Mai had already activated its colossal weapon. There was a real danger that Mai would strike before they could even reach Tokyo. Moreover, arriving in Tokyo early and waiting was not an option either, since that would turn the capital into a battlefield. Naoto had no interest in strategizing. He just wanted to save Anchor, so could they please just head straight there? Thanks to their return, Marie gradually regained her resolve. Without further hesitation, she decided they would go to Tokyo immediately to prevent the war. At this moment, in the Akihabara grid, Naoto had successfully infiltrated the district's entire broadcast network. He wore a mask to conceal his identity, then transmitted a message announcing that he was about to intervene in the lives of every resident in this area. Sure enough, a second later, the entire Tokyo Tower was frozen in place before everyone's astonished eyes, then shattered to pieces. Naoto continued his announcement, declaring that he had seized full control of the entire Akihabara grid. Following Naoto's direction, wherever he pointed, a massive explosion erupted. Once his performance was complete, he returned to a serious state and focused on picking up sounds around him. Somewhere in Tokyo at that moment, Anchor was still advancing alongside the colossal weapon. As it turned out, 3 days before the attack began, Marie had received intelligence that the massive weapon was being transported to Tokyo through the deepest underground level. Because of this, they had devised a plan to get there first, seize control of Tokyo, and evacuate all civilians from the area. That way, they could simply let the weapon and the military fight it out in an empty city. That was the plan, But in reality, Tokyo's security was extremely tight, and they lacked the manpower and time to carry it out. Marie was not worried. She used her network of connections to successfully infiltrate Tokyo's #1 clock tower, and not only that, but every other clock tower in the area as well. As it turned out, the ones backing them were the very same doctors from the Kyoto Purge incident. Ryuzu was assigned to scout and monitor the Tokyo military in the deep underground. Thanks to the support of everyone, including Conrad, they had successfully deployed the plan with enough time to spare. Thinking back to the events in Kyoto, Marie still could not help but blame herself for forcing them to leave the guild. Conrad was not particularly troubled by it. He believed that leaving the guild was for the best, as it allowed them to avoid the conspiracies of the bureaucrats. At this point, they turned their attention back to the map of Tokyo's clock tower. Marie asked everyone to handle the remaining tasks here and carry out the city's functions according to Nayato's instructions. Right at that moment, Nayato's performance from the beginning of the episode was broadcast on screens across the entire district. Once it was done, he immediately removed his headphones to scout. In 9 seconds, 2 supersonic helicopters and a transport carrying more than 12 automatons would arrive. This was the very scene that had played out in the first episode, where everyone coordinated seamlessly to deal with the automatons. When that was taken care of, Nayato put his headphones back on and sensed that the battle between the colossal weapon and the military had already begun underground. According to the plan, Marie and Halter would first help the civilians escape, then wait at the safe house for everyone to regroup, while Nayato and Ryuzu would go rescue Anchor. At this point, Ryuzu suddenly suggested that Marie join the rescue mission for her sister. Although the plan Nayato had devised was flawless, as a precaution against anything unforeseen, they might need her. Marie quickly understood. She nodded in agreement, knowing that the precaution was in case Anchor needed repairs. The three of them then descended into the deep underground and waited for Anchor to appear. The very next second, a wall was destroyed by a tremendous force, and Anchor emerged. Before the fighting began, Ryuzu told Anchor that her voice could reach Nayato, and that they would all work together to save her. But Anchor herself also had to fight against whatever was binding her and join them in battle. With those words, Ryuzu and Anchor simultaneously shifted into imaginary time mode, preparing for combat. Nayato and Marie watched tensely from behind. The instant the transformation was complete, the two clashed without hesitation in a ferocious battle, one overpowering the other, one defending against the other's blows. In truth, the gap in combat ability between Ryuzu, who was never designed for fighting, and Anchor, who was purpose-built for it, was staggeringly clear. Despite this, Ryuzu refused to give up and continued to fight her shackled sister with everything she had. Flashing back to the day before the battle, Nayato had reminded Ryuzu that she did not need to win. She only needed to destroy the mask on Anchor's face. He had also devised a battle plan for Ryuzu, one that required Nayato himself to serve as a shield. Because Anchor was programmed not to attack ordinary humans, they had witnessed this clearly back in the industrial district. And so, in the present, Ryuzu and Anchor were fighting exactly according to the plan that had been laid out. When the moment arrived, Ryuzu lured her sister toward where Nayato and Marie were standing. Then, just as Anchor lunged forward, Ryuzu spun and leaped upward, redirecting Anchor's attack so it would strike Marie. In that instant, Anchor was forced to slam on the brakes, causing her gears to grind violently from the impact. At that precise moment, Ryuzu closed in beside her sister and tore away the mask that had imprisoned her. Immediately after, Anchor threw herself into her older sister's arms. Back in reality, both of them returned to their normal states. Marie repaired Anchor while Nayato took on the task of restoring Ryuzu. Once Ryuzu regained consciousness, Nayato removed his headphones and realized the battle between the military and the colossal weapon seemed to have ended. With that, the three of them quickly brought Anchor back to the safe house for repairs. Anchor had been lost in a long dream. She heard someone arguing, and she heard her sister's gentle voice. Then, a moment later, she slowly opened her eyes to see Nayato, Marie, and Ryuzu sitting anxiously by her bedside. The instant she saw them, Anchor identified Nayato as her father and Marie as her mother. Setting aside the ensuing chaos, Ryuzu reminded the girl to choose her master, just as she herself had chosen Nayato. Seeing that Nayato had no objection, Anchor wanted to accept him as her master, on the condition that he answer her question correctly. Anchor asked Nayato who she was. Nayato simply replied that Anchor was a very adorable and charming girl. With just that simple answer, Anchor successfully accepted Nayato as her master. The girl then shifted into a mechanical state, and Ryuzu explained that this was because Anchor had internally classified herself as a weapon. Naoto gently sat down and asked the girl to return to her free will operating mode. He gave her permission to act according to her own will. In the end, Anchor chose to burst into tears, repeating apologies over and over for everything she had done. Elsewhere, a man with a stark white beard wore a smile, as though scheming something. Once upon a time, humanity had created 5 world-shaping energy sources, even reaching a level that could be called divine. But despite all of that, the Earth was ultimately destroyed, and everything became meaningless. The fearsome man recalled the history of the Earth and the way the world had operated, questioning the true meaning of this world's existence. Elsewhere, it was still an ordinary day. Naoto was happily holding little Anchor in his arms, which made Ryuzu jealous enough to show her displeasure. Naoto hurriedly explained that he saw Anchor as a daughter, while Ryuzu was his wife. In the middle of their playful banter, the cube embedded within Anchor suddenly tore open a pocket of space, and from it, a mechanical head dropped down. When Halter entered the safe house, he found everyone gathered around a robotic head, with little Anchor now back to normal. Marie had already connected the mechanical man to a device to channel energy into him. The moment the man opened his eyes and saw Halter and Marie, he was utterly stunned, then broke into a grin as though reuniting with an old friend. Halter paid the man no further attention and instead asked Anchor how she determined her targets when attacking. Based on Naoto's explanation, the two of them learned that Anchor was programmed never to harm or kill humans, which put them at ease. But right at that moment, Naoto caught an enormous sound rising from underground. A second later, a shockwave rattled everything around them. Naoto warned the group that the colossal weapon was digging its way up from below. The mechanical man, now just ahead, warned them that the military would not be able to stop it. He was the one who had sent the radio signal, explaining that electromagnetism was the pinnacle of electromagnetic research. Only then did Marie understand everything, but it was already too late. The colossal weapon had successfully surfaced, and it immediately emitted a radio weapon blast across the entire Tokyo area. Everyone, both humans and automatons alike, could not withstand the assault and collapsed in agony, clutching their heads. The very next second, Ryuzu, Halter, and Anchor all went down. Marie and Naoto watched in horror as every gear in Akihabara ground to a halt. Unable to endure the powerful radio waves, Naoto collapsed alongside them. Outside the city, the next day had dawned, and everything was engulfed in a terrifying silence. In the sky above, military soldiers were flying straight into Akihabara. With Akihabara destroyed, Tokyo's future was also doomed. The government forces wanted to advance and deal with the rebel military. But the moment their aircraft descended, every last one was shot down from afar by the colossal weapon. They were all within its firing range. Not a single aircraft could escape. Only a lucky few managed to bail out with parachutes. At that moment, in the Kasumigaseki grid, at the Prime Minister's residence, the heads of state were horrified upon receiving the situation report. Yet they could do nothing about the Ministry of Defense. The Minister of Defense, who was also serving as interim Prime Minister, even issued an order to fire the capital's defense cannons at the target. He ignored all objections, stubbornly insisting on his command. And so, from a distance, volleys of smoke shells were fired directly at the grid. But the man commanding the colossal weapon was utterly unfazed. With his enormous weapon, he effortlessly erected a defensive shield and even directly destroyed the government's offensive weapons. Every head of state was stunned by the display before them. On the other side, the people in control of the Yatsukahagi were celebrating Tokyo's invincibility, confident that other regions would now have to acknowledge the value of their research. They immediately began recharging the advanced weapon, preparing to continue the fight and obliterate everything in a single blow. The man leading Tokyo recalled how, 1,000 years ago, the one called Y had rebuilt this planet using nothing but gears. Countless scientists had sacrificed their lives trying to understand how the planet worked, and every one of them had failed. Y had brought them to this absurd, meaningless world. He was an unrivaled egotist. As it turned out, the strange man Naoto and Ryuzu had met underground was the leader of Tokyo. This man had asked Naoto whether he had ever felt like giving up on this world, when everything it did seemed to stand in the way of humanity's progress. Naoto had simply said he had never given up hope. Recalling that answer, the man could only clench his teeth in silence. Back at the safe house, Naoto had now regained consciousness. He saw Marie sitting silently in a corner, saying nothing. She simply informed him that everything had been destroyed. Elsewhere, the Prime Minister had only just arrived at the scene and learned of the situation. On their end, Marie explained that the electromagnetic blast had magnetized everything, which meant any gear that had been magnetized could no longer function properly. Naoto saw Ruzu lying with her body opened up. He wanted to save her, but her heat output was dangerously high. At the Prime Minister's office, Karasawa, a former Meister and a member of the Ministry of Technology, recounted the entire situation to the Prime Minister. Once again, the Ministry of Defense wanted to launch a purge on the Akihabara grid. The others immediately objected, since this area was an interconnected grid tied to Tokyo. Doing so would cause catastrophic consequences for all of East Asia and Japan. All these people could do was argue among themselves, leaving Karasawa feeling helpless. He had come here to gather intelligence for Marie, after all. When asked, Karasawa readily explained the electromagnetic technology used by the weapon, and bluntly exposed the government's involvement in backing this merciless creation. Hearing the officials deny everything, Karasawa realized that many nations had been secretly researching electromagnetic technology. Meanwhile, Naoto and Marie were arguing again. Marie told Naoto in despair that they could not even leave this room, let alone think about saving the city or rescuing anyone. Naoto refused to give up. He smashed the window and tried to use a cable to escape. He wanted to take Rusu and Anchor with him, find a way to solve the problem, and then repair the two of them. Marie thought of Halter, the person who had been by her side since she was a child. She decided to join Naoto and bring Halter out of there as well. Just as they were preparing to haul everyone out, Anchor, who had been lying in a corner, suddenly emitted a sound. Unlike her sister or anyone else, the little girl was somehow still able to function in the magnetized environment. Anchor explained that she had just entered an emergency overheating state. Marie immediately understood. The girl had eliminated the magnetism through Curie heating. Unlike Anchor, who had a built-in cooling mechanism, Ryuzu did not, which was why she had overheated so badly and could not yet regain consciousness. Naoto had already moved her to a cooler spot. With that, the three of them decided to find a place where Ryuzu could be repaired, and then head to Yino to regroup with Conrad. In the Yino district, the group arrived at a strip club following Conrad's directions. Inside, they found Conrad surrounded by beautiful girls, leaving them all stunned. The old man certainly knew how to have a good time. Leading them deeper inside, Conrad walked them past scantily clad girls dancing in lingerie. As it turned out, these were automatons he had created himself for entertainment purposes. They descended to a secret underground level of the building, which served as a black market for automatons, one that even conducted business with the authorities. They quickly placed Ryuzu into a cooling shaft to begin bringing her temperature down. Halter's head and the mechanical man's head were also placed in preservation boxes. Marie asked Conrad to find a spare body for them within the next 12 hours to ensure they could still function. On the other side, seeing Anchor worry about her sister, Naoto could only reassure her that Ryuzu would be fine. Marie also did not forget about Naoto's burned hand and came over to administer first aid. While waiting for Ryuzu to wake up, they found a temporary body for the mechanical man, Vermouth. When he opened his eyes, everyone was gathered around him with complicated expressions. Vermouth was stunned. Had they really connected his brain to a voluptuous female body? Even so, he could tell these people possessed highly advanced technology and considerable skill, so it was best to show them some respect. Setting aside the introductions and reunions, Marie asked him directly what he knew about the colossal weapon and the schemes behind it. Vermouth answered bluntly. The moment that monstrosity had appeared before the government, everything had already been decided. Sure enough, at that very moment in the Prime Minister's residence, the heads of state were already considering using the tall wand on the Akihabara area. It was a weapon of mass destruction stationed in the sky, capable of annihilating 1 or even 2 to 3 cities. Predictably, this proposal met fierce opposition, with many openly accusing the Prime Minister of merely trying to cover up his own mistakes. The Minister of Defense was furious and wanted his military forces to handle the problem. Once again, these people descended into bickering. On the other end, through Vermouth's account, Marie now understood. With this weapon, the government and the military would destroy each other, which meant the weapon did not need to move. This was not a terrorist attack. It was a full-scale coup. Naoto added his own deduction. The colossal weapon could not move. It required over 1,000 units of energy to recharge, which would take more than 60 hours to complete. Vermouth did not disagree. In reality, it was merely a mobile electromagnetic hybrid tactical weapon, combining gear technology with electromagnetism. This meant the people behind it did not just want to sit back and win. They had another scheme in play. Marie's headache only worsened, unsure of what to do. But unlike her, Naoto simply took Anchor's hand and headed out, as if determined to enjoy the rest of their youth. At this point, the weapon of destruction had charged to 12%. To accelerate the process, the man in command ordered his people to reduce its combat capabilities. Outside the city, people were going about their lives as though nothing had happened. Naoto took Anchor strolling and playing, blending in with everyone else. Marie followed them, still unable to understand what Naoto was trying to do. She assumed he simply wanted to save her life while he could. During their outing, they wandered into a shop selling clothes and all kinds of stuffed animals. While picking out clothes and toys for Anchor, Naoto noticed a pair of matching rings nearby, and a wave of sadness washed over him. Marie was not far from them, reading the news on a bulletin board, unable to feel any joy either. She kept racking her brain, trying to figure out how to prevent the disaster that was unfolding. While she was lost in thought, Anchor suddenly appeared and handed her a toy keychain she had won as a prize. Seeing that Marie was still sad, Anchor offered that if it would make her feel better, she would go destroy the colossal weapon for them. At that same moment, they both noticed Naoto doubled over in discomfort. His noise-canceling headphones had broken back in Akihabara, but right now he needed to find something else first before he could buy new ones. In truth, Naoto was not as cheerful as he appeared. He too wanted to hunt down those villains and make them pay for what they had done to Ryuzu. The three of them settled into a cafe to rest for the time being. While discussing what could possibly solve the problem, Anchor suddenly spoke up. She had a wish. She wanted to destroy the colossal weapon so that Marie would be happy. Hearing this, Naoto knew Marie had said something to the girl. He was genuinely angry that Marie was treating Anchor as nothing more than a weapon. Moreover, the girl was still in the middle of recharging. How could she possibly fight at full power? On top of that, Marie was forcing a child to bear an enormous burden just to get the job done. Naoto demanded to know whether Marie had any self-respect at all. Seeing them argue because of her, Anchor could only apologize. After being scolded, Marie finally realized how impulsive and foolish she had been. She then abruptly turned and left, though not before asking Anchor to look after Naoto carefully. Seeing that Marie had come to her senses, Naoto breathed a sigh of relief. By afternoon, in the laboratory, Marie was frantically repairing and reassembling Ryuzu. When Naoto returned, Marie called him over to help fix his wife. Naoto explained that he could not do the kind of work Marie was describing. He only repaired Ryuzu based on instinct. While they were talking, Naoto was suddenly struck by inspiration. He wanted to seize the Pillar of Heaven, the central hub connecting every district in Japan. This action would make them criminals on a monumental scale. Marie had no objections, but she was quite surprised to see Vermouth volunteer to join as well. Though their hearts were filled with worry, everyone gradually refocused on their true objective. They were not heroes, nor were they villains. They were simply carrying out their mission to achieve their own goals. At that moment, atop the Pillar of Heaven, a dark-haired woman sensed that everything was spiraling out of control. She wished Marie were here. Below the tower, long columns of military troops and advanced equipment were deployed and ready, as though preparing for a decisive battle. At dawn, at the Pillar of Heaven, automatons and soldiers were all on their shifts. Just when everything seemed peaceful, an observation tower was suddenly brought crashing down. Smoke and haze obscured everything. While the soldiers were on high alert, Ryuzu and Anchor appeared and introduced themselves. They gave the soldiers no chance to respond, swiftly dispatching every one of them while simultaneously destroying the older generation of automatons. From a distance, Vermouth watched with amusement as Anchor and Ryuzu took on 1,000 opponents between the two of them. Over the radio, Naoto reminded Vermouth to fight in the direction he had specified. The man in a beautiful woman's body leaped straight down, faced the robots head-on, and took them out one by one with style. He even dodged their gunfire with ease before hijacking one of their units. As it turned out, while planning their next move, Naoto had suggested that Marie install Halter's brain into a heavy armored automaton. He had intended to pair Halter with an Oberon, a model that had never been deployed in the field. However, Marie insisted on using a Genbu instead, a similar model that was already available at the Pillar of Heaven. The task of finding the body was assigned directly to Vermouth, which was why he was now piloting the heavy armored automaton and clearing out the enemy one by one. After an exhausting fight, Vermouth finally succeeded in his mission and secured a jet black Genbu. Marie and Naoto then appeared. The next task of installing the brain had to be done by Marie herself. Seeing how worried she was, Vermouth reassured her that Halter was a soldier, and once he caught the scent of the battlefield, he would come right back. Naoto reminded her that she only had 30 seconds to complete the installation. The enemy was closing in. Without further hesitation, Marie leaped onto the Genbu's body to perform the brain transplant. Outside, Anchor and Ryuzu were still battling the heavy armored automatons. After 30 seconds, Marie had finished the installation. What was more, she seemed to have awakened a new ability similar to Naoto's, allowing her to perceive everything within an enormous radius. She saw that the enemy was preparing to fire an incredibly powerful blast in their direction. Yet neither Naoto nor Ryuzu had noticed it. In her panic, Marie could only close her eyes in despair. But at that very moment, the final springs completed their cycle within the Genbu's body. At last, Halter awakened in his new form and saved everyone from the incoming bombardment. With his seasoned combat expertise, Halter needed only seconds to adapt to his new body, then swiftly set about destroying every enemy unit ahead without killing a single person, all within roughly 40 seconds. With this new robotic weapon at their disposal, the others no longer needed to throw themselves into the fray. Halter had taken over and was handling the next wave of enemy fire for them. Marie was slightly worried about him, but Halter reassured her that with this new body, they had nothing to fear. And so, the security forces of the Pillar of Heaven had been dismantled. News of their infiltration was recorded in vivid detail, with Naoto's face plastered front and center on the headlines. Afterward, he did not forget to make another public broadcast, directly declaring that they would cast Tokyo's entire interconnected grid into hell. While everyone was reeling in shock, another woman appeared on the screen, Her Highness Hashinomiya. She calmly recounted the events at the Pillar of Heaven, explaining how Naoto's group had successfully seized control of it. She urged all citizens to evacuate the capital immediately. Seeing that the situation on that end was favorable, Karasawa quietly slipped out of the leader's chamber, wanting to report back to Marie as soon as possible. On the other side, the broadcast also reached the Tokyo area where the remnants of the old Shiga military were stationed. The man fell silent for a moment, then changed his plan, ordering his subordinates to resume prioritizing combat energy recharge. He wanted to adjust his strategy and see what Naoto would do next to oppose him. On their end, Karasawa's intelligence was quickly delivered by Conrad to the Pillar of Heaven. The tall wand would be dropped at exactly 2 in the afternoon, giving them 6 more hours. Naoto, Anchor, and Ryuzu were still enjoying a moment of peace indoors, while Marie was already studying the map with everyone else, preparing for the battle against the weapon of destruction before the tall wand arrived. Just then, Hashinomiya appeared to speak with Marie. As it turned out, Marie and Hashinomiya had been classmates for a time, and were also very close friends. Seeing that Hashinomiya already knew something, Marie spoke frankly about their plan, noting that all of it had been conceived by Naoto. Hashinomiya had already witnessed how Naoto could analyze the Pillar of Heaven using nothing but sound, and seeing the absolute trust everyone in the group placed in him, she understood to some extent. Even so, Hashinomiya calculated that Naoto was a threat to all of them, and that they should deal with him as quickly as possible. But the moment those words left her mouth, Ryuzu, who had been sitting outside, instantly closed in and warned Hashinomiya not to harbor any thoughts of harming her master. Anchor was equally displeased, reminding the woman not to speak ill of her father. Hashinomiya was taken aback and could only apologize. Hearing that, the 2 automatons lost interest and returned to doting on Naoto. After finishing her conversation with her old friend, Marie went back to the research room to continue her work. Anchor was also in the room, since Naoto and Ryuzu needed to speak privately. Not wanting to leave the girl alone, Marie let Anchor help with small tasks. Anchor was overjoyed at Marie's kindness and immediately followed her. Outside in the garden, Naoto noticed that Ryuzu had been avoiding eye contact with him, so he went to speak with her directly and ask why. Ryuzu was silent for a moment before confessing. She had caused the burn on Naoto's hand and felt deeply guilty about it, believing she had failed in her duty as a proper servant. Seeing how sad she was, Naoto thought for a moment, then presented Ryuzu with a ring. It was something he had crafted himself during the nights when Ryuzu was still unconscious, and he wanted her to wear it for the rest of her life. Ryuzu told Naoto never to do this for anyone else but her, then happily and joyfully accepted the ring. At this point, the Japanese government's military had deployed its automatons to the Pillar of Heaven to rescue Her Highness Hashinomiya. 21 hours remained before the colossal weapon would be fully activated. and 7 hours before the tall wand would be dropped on the Tokyo area. At the Pillar of Heaven, Marie and everyone else were working at full capacity, pushing to complete the final steps. With nothing else to do, Vermouth and Halter joined the effort to buy time, fending off the automatons sent to the tower. Naoto, along with Ryuzu and Anchor, was quietly observing his surroundings when Hoshinomiya approached, requesting a private conversation. The four of them entered a separate room to talk. Naoto explained why he wanted to destroy the colossal weapon. Ryuzu had been attacked by it, and Anchor had been enslaved by it, forced to kill automatons for a very long time. Hoshinomiya then asked why he chose revenge rather than simply going along with the government's purge of the Akihabara grid, since that would be the fastest way to achieve his goal. Naoto frowned and explained that the people who had nothing to do with the weapon of destruction had committed no crime. Hearing this, Hoshinomiya's expression softened. She remarked that Naoto was a truly fair person. On the other side, the leader of the old Shiga military was still reflecting on his conversation with the young man named Naoto, the one who had stolen every theory humanity had ever created, the one who had built this bizarre gear planet. He muttered to himself that if Y were a demon or a god, it would be acceptable, but ordinary people like themselves had no way of reaching such transcendent heights. Setting aside his idle thoughts, the man, to the utter shock of his subordinates, directly opened the cage separating himself from the people before him, then coldly electrocuted them all to ash. He wanted to challenge Y once more. Back at the Pillar of Heaven, the government's automatons were still attacking in dense waves. Halter and Vermouth could only fight back with everything they had. Only 30 minutes remained before the tall wand would be dropped. All they could do was hold out as long as possible. At that very moment, Naoto caught a sound reaching his ears and immediately ordered Marie to concentrate all the clouds to the south. Marie did not fully understand why, but chose to trust him. In the distance, the old Shiga military's colossal weapon had loaded its main cannon and was aiming straight at them. Marie gave everything she had to summon the clouds in time, but Naoto sensed that they would not make it. Their only option was to run. At that instant, the colossal weapon fired directly at them. A violent shockwave slammed into the Pillar of Heaven, but the blast did not target the entire island. Instead, it focused solely on the machine they had painstakingly built. The colossal weapon had officially opened fire. The main cannon that had destroyed Akihabara had returned. Everyone was stunned by this move from the enemy. Just then, from the crater that had just been created, a voice called out, reminding them that there was a suitable countermeasure against the microwave amplification cannon. Naoto and Ryuzu recognized the voice immediately. It was Genai, the old man they had met in the deep abyss, the recluse who had rejected the world. Genai explained that he had no interest in the coup. Marie turned back, wanting to use their own machine, but their equipment had already lost its connection. To make matters worse, Karasawa reported that the tall wand's drop time had been moved up. It was hurtling toward them at tremendous speed. Just as the tall wand was about to slam into the Pillar of Heaven, the colossal weapon was activated once more. But this time, it did not attack the tower. Instead, it intercepted the tall wand head-on. Thanks to that, the area was spared from being bombed back to the Stone Age. Genai muttered again, as if speaking to himself, that he would not let this end so easily. You monster, why? Everything fell into a deathly silence. Marie wanted to continue rebuilding the equipment to carry on with the plan, but Naoto stopped her. He had heard it. The sound of the gears had vanished. No one knew what to say. The colossal weapon had redirected all its energy to the main cannon, which was how it had been able to fire ahead of schedule. The next firing, by Naoto's calculation, would come in 72 minutes. Outside, Vermouth and Halter were still fighting without rest. Conrad could only console Marie by reminding her of the miracle during the Kyoto Purge. Marie, in despair, asked Naoto whether he, Ryuzu, and Anchor could destroy the weapon together. Naoto answered bluntly, if that were the only option left, he would rather let all of Japan perish. At that moment, Anchor suddenly declared that she would not obey his order, then leaped down and left. Naoto tried to stop her but was too late. All he could do was send Ryuzu after the girl, asking them to wait 70 minutes until he could come up with a solution. Ryuzu accepted the order. Before leaving, she told Marie to use every last bit of her brainpower to think of a way. After arguing back and forth, Marie and Naoto regained their spirits and turned their attention to building a new machine. Anchor, meanwhile, stood silently observing the city around her, preparing to handle everything on her own. Ryuzu caught up to the girl, embraced her, and together they waited. Atop the pillar of heaven, Marie reasoned that if Nayato's intuition was correct, then it was the clock technology itself that was flawed, and they would solve it from scratch. After discussing and sharing their knowledge, Marie taught Nayato how to analyze and process, while Nayato taught Marie how to feel and use intuition. Once they were ready, the two decided to step together into the voice of the pillar of heaven. Through Nayato's guidance, Marie entered an entirely new world. She blacked out for a brief moment, and when she came to, she understood the core of the problem. The two immediately took their places at the repair equipment and began creating a new machine, simultaneously sensing and analyzing as they worked. Outside, Conrad and Hoshinomiya watched their speed and concentration, their jaws dropping at this pair of geniuses. Below, Anchor handed Ryuzu the stuffed bear that Nayato had given her earlier. Not wanting it to get dirty or damaged, she kept only the toy keychain for herself. After saying goodbye to her sister, Anchor leaped down, activating her self-destruction sequence and imaginary time. Inside the control center, Genai was still consumed with hatred for Y, the creator of this planet. At the Pillar of Heaven, Marie and Nayato were both using intuition and analysis to repair the old equipment and create something new. Outside, everyone realized with astonishment that the two of them were not merely repairing. They were forging entirely new gears right there on the spot. Ryuzu stood silently above, watching her sister descend toward the weapon of destruction, her thoughts unknowable. Once Anchor was close enough to the target, she immediately summoned her cannon and launched a direct strike at the weapon of destruction. Her attack managed to leave a small scratch. Seeing this, she switched weapons, drawing her colossal sword to pierce through the terrifying machine. Only 3 minutes remained before Genai's weapon of destruction would fire again. Atop the Pillar of Heaven, Vermith and Halter were still giving their all to hold back the government's automatons, while Marie and Nayato inside never stopped working. As for Anchor, after relentless effort, she had bored her way into the weapon's interior. Though her body was showing signs of deterioration, covered in grime and scratches, Anchor pressed on, swinging her sword and shattering everything from within with over 1,000 strikes. Back at the Pillar of Heaven, Vermith saw the enemy closing in, ready to blast the tower itself, and had no choice but to fall back a step. The reckless assault from the enemy was also disrupting Marie and Nayato's creation of the new machine. Even so, Halter and Vermith were not overly worried. Those two would manage. Inside, Conrad assessed the situation objectively. Their progress had not only slowed but was sustaining heavy damage. Even so, the two geniuses showed no intention of giving up. At that moment, Genai's voice rang out once more, dripping with satisfaction, mocking their efforts and mocking Y, who had created today's despair. Hearing this, Marie turned and cursed him as a self-righteous fool who loved speaking on behalf of all humanity. Nayato could not help but be amazed. Those words were almost identical to what he had said before. Genai was equally stunned. He realized that the current Y was not one person but two. The old man had concluded that Nayato and Marie were the reincarnation of Y. With that thought, he grew even more eager for the final 5 seconds before he could fire once more. When the time came, Genai did not hesitate to press the button, but the instant the energy began to build, it immediately reported a decline. Genai furrowed his brow and instantly knew this was the work of Y's minions. Indeed, no matter how many times she was shocked or sent into convulsions, Anchor kept destroying the systems from within. During the process, the machine even tried to assimilate her, pulling her back into a controlled state. Anchor forced herself to stand upright, willed herself to stay calm, and activated imaginary time to continue fighting. Regardless of the agonizing jolts of electricity coursing through her, Anchor pressed on with her destruction, not even sparing her own arm. At the Pillar of Heaven, Hoshinomiya and Conrad also noticed that the weapon of destruction had failed to fire, which meant Anchor had done something. Nayato remained silent, only pushing Marie harder to continue with their machine. Inside the weapon, Anchor fought with everything she had in her final minutes, until the gears within her body shattered. Returning to her normal form, Anchor still tried to stand, wanting to keep destroying. But at that moment, a bullet struck her abdomen. Genai approached and inspected her body. He switched to a cannon, intent on finishing her off completely, marking humanity's triumph. But just then, a musical keychain suddenly fell from her. Anchor recalled the brief memories she had shared with Nayato and Marie. Just as she had accepted her death, the bullet never reached her. Ryuzu had appeared, fulfilling her duty as an older sister to Anchor. Seeing Genai raise his weapon again, Ryuzu severed his gun-wielding arm without hesitation. Genai was not dismayed even in the face of death. No matter what happened to him, his weapon of destruction would still fire. But at that very moment, once again, the entire system reported failure. Outside, the weapon of destruction had self-destructed. As it turned out, thanks to Anchor buying them time, Marie and Naoto had successfully unlocked their potential and completed the device. Outside, Hoshinomiya and Conrad could not believe their eyes. The divine tree had been fully reborn. The two of them had completed it in time. Even so, Marie and Naoto could not bring themselves to celebrate. They had finished it later than the time they had promised Anchor. At that moment, Vermouth and Halter regrouped with them, urging everyone to flee before the automatons closed in. Naoto just smiled and told them all they needed to do was jump from here and use the device to control the convection currents. With that, he volunteered to jump first. Vermouth and Halter followed suit. Marie activated the machine, bid farewell to Hoshinomiya, and then leaped down with the rest. Inside the crumbling weapon, Ryuzu looked at Genai and felt he had been defeated from the very beginning. Genai was bitter about the automaton's intrusion, but Ryuzu paid him no mind. She simply took Anchor and left, abandoning him to his self-destruction. After landing in another grid called Ariake, everyone gathered in a laboratory to reunite with Anchor and Ryuzu. Naoto immediately examined Anchor. Fortunately, she had no fatal injuries, and they could still repair her. Anchor woke up at the same time and apologized to everyone for failing to complete her mission and for disobeying orders. Naoto simply smiled and told her she deserved praise. Marie wiped her tears and embraced the girl. Only then did Anchor finally let her guard down and cry. By evening, Karasawa reunited with the group, bringing a boat to assist their journey, along with materials to rebuild Halter's body. Though the weather was terrible, this was the best way to avoid pursuit. After saying goodbye to the doctors and Conrad, everyone boarded the boat and continued onward. Time passed, and another peaceful day arrived. Marie sunbathed while Halter relaxed, fishing and listening to news about the regions beyond. By now, Naoto had finished repairing Anchor and brought her outside. Marie was so delighted that she scooped the girl up in a hug, completely ignoring Naoto in the process. The two of them started bickering again, with Ryuzu jumping in out of jealousy to make matters worse. Right at that moment, Vermouth spotted something alarming from above. A large fleet was heading straight for them. Naoto had already heard it. He immediately grew excited, declaring that they should blow the fleet apart and claim a battleship for themselves. Despite everyone groaning at the idea, no one actually refused. They all took their positions, ready to carry out this supremely thrilling plan of his.